Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey, and trust me, it's not the kind with umbrella drinks and poolside cabanas. Forget everything you think you know about the Aztecs, those feathered serpent gods, the glistening gold, the grand pyramids. Because while all that was real, it was merely the gilded cage around a truly terrifying, utterly bewildering core. Their secret obsession with blood, with sacrifice, with the constant gnawing fear that the very sun would die without their meticulously administered gore. We're talking about a culture so advanced, so intricate, so deeply spiritual, yet simultaneously steeped in a level of ritual violence that would make even the most hardened modern horror fan flinch. This isn't just about slicing and dicing. It's about a worldview where life and death were inextricably linked, where every sunrise was a miracle bought with an ocean of human tears and pulsing hearts. If you've ever wondered what it felt like to stand on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of divine demands, tonight's your night. So, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment below telling me where you're listening from. I want to know who's brave enough to venture into this with me. Now, dim the lights. Maybe light some incense or don't, because the smells we're about to encounter, well, they're not for the faint of heart. Settle in, because we're peeling back the obsidian-sharp layers of the Aztec world, and, trust me, the secrets we're about to unearth are stranger and far more gruesome than any myth. All right, buckle up, because before we even get to the gleaming obsidian blades and the chilling thump of a still-beating heart on a sacrificial altar, you need to understand the why. Forget your modern cynicism, your 21st century detachment. You, standing there in the bustling, sun-baked heart of Tenochtitlan, are a creature of profound spiritual terror. The very air you breathe, the corn that feeds your family, the sun that warms your skin, all of it, every last sliver, is a precarious gift, a loan from an incredibly powerful, incredibly fickle pantheon of gods. And these aren't your friendly neighborhood deities. These are cosmic forces, hungry, demanding, and utterly unforgiving. Imagine waking up every single day knowing that the sun, that glorious, life-giving orb, could simply decide not to rise. That the universe, delicately balanced on the edge of a cosmic knife, was perpetually teetering on the brink of collapse. This wasn't a philosophical musing for the Aztecs. It was a deeply ingrained existential terror. You see, their creation, myths, particularly the legend of the Five Suns, painted a stark picture. Previous worlds had been destroyed by divine whim, by jaguars, by hurricanes, by volcanic fire, by floods. And you, lucky you, were living in the fifth, the current iteration, a precarious epoch kept alive only by the most precious sustenance imaginable, human blood and human hearts. It was a cosmic credit card, and the Aztecs were constantly paying the interest, lest the whole magnificent, terrifying structure come crashing down. The chief god demanding this sanguinary tithe, Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird left one, the ferocious solar deity and patron god of the Mexica people, your people. He was born fully formed and armed, bursting from his mother's womb to defend her honor, slaying his siblings in a cosmic fratricide. Talk about a dramatic entrance, right? This guy wasn't interested in your prayers and pretty flowers. He was a war god, a sun god, and his journey across the sky each day was a titanic struggle against the forces of darkness. And like any celestial warrior worth his salt, he needed fuel. And that fuel, my friend, was you. Or more accurately, the life force within you. The Aztecs believed that Chalchihuatl, the precious water, which was the divine vital essence found in human blood, was the ultimate nourishment for Huitzilopochtli. Without it, he'd weaken, falter, and eventually the sun would plunge into an eternal, icy darkness, bringing about the end of the world. No pressure though, right? But it wasn't just Huitzilopochtli with an insatiable appetite. Oh no, the Aztec pantheon was a whole buffet line of demanding deities. There was Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, the omnipresent god of the night sky, destiny, and sorcery. This dude was the embodiment of change through conflict, a terrifying, capricious deity who demanded perfection and often got it through suffering. His sacrifices were often the most elaborate, the most psychologically fraught, involving individuals chosen for their physical perfection, treated like living gods for a year before their ultimate horrifying demise. We'll get into that beautiful, soul-crushing paradox later, trust me. Then you had Tlaloc, the ancient rain god, a figure both benevolent and terrifying. He brought the life-giving waters that made the maize grow, but he could also unleash devastating floods and droughts. And what did Tlaloc love? Well, he loved the tears of children. Yes, you heard that right. The more a child cried before being sacrificed, the more bountiful the rains would be. Imagine the psychological torment, the desperate prayers of parents, the chilling belief that your child's final screams were a necessary offering for the survival of the entire community. It's not just gruesome, it's a profound, gut-wrenching insight into the choices people make when confronted with the crushing weight of existential survival. You'd be standing there, watching the sky for rain, and in the back of your mind, a child's sob would echo, a chilling reminder of the price of a harvest. So, from your Aztec perspective, this wasn't some gratuitous act of barbarism. This was a sophisticated, deeply reasoned, and absolutely essential cosmic transaction. You weren't just killing, you were engaging in a profound act of spiritual maintenance. You were a technician in the grand, terrifying clockwork of the universe. Every heartbeat ripped from a chest, every skull added to the Tzompantli, every drop of blood spilled on the sacred stones was a prayer, a desperate plea, a life insurance premium for the entire cosmos. It was a heavy burden, a crushing responsibility that permeated every aspect of your life. From the moment you woke up to the moment you went to sleep, the gods were watching, demanding, and the threat of the end of the world was a constant, chilling whisper carried on the wind. This profound fear shaped their architecture, their art, their social structure. The Great Pyramids, like the Templo Mayor, weren't just impressive feats of engineering. They were massive, blood-soaked altars, gateways to the divine, designed to elevate the offerings as close to the hungry heavens as possible. The meticulously carved stone figures, the vibrant murals, all told stories of divine power and human subservience, reinforcing the absolute necessity of these rituals. You lived in a world where the sacred and the profane were constantly intertwined, where the beauty of a blooming flower could only exist because of the grotesque horror of a sacrifice performed just yesterday. It's a paradox that would make your modern brain short-circuit, but for you, an Aztec, it was simply the immutable law of the universe. To question it was to invite annihilation. To participate, even just as an observer, was to be a part of the grand, terrifying drama of cosmic survival. And that, my friends, is just the beginning of understanding the strange, dark heart of Aztec sacrifice. The motivation was real, the fear was palpable, and the scale of their commitment to this cosmic bargain was simply staggering. It's time to see how they went about fulfilling those divine demands. Alright, so you understand why the gods needed their buffet of souls. Now let's talk logistics. How exactly did you, as an Aztec citizen, ensure the celestial grocery store was always fully stocked? It wasn't a matter of wandering down to the local marketplace and picking up a heart for Huitzilopochtli. Oh no. The procurement of victims was a sophisticated, multifaceted operation, deeply woven into the fabric of Aztec society, politics, and warfare. And trust me, it wasn't always about capturing the fiercest warrior in battle. Sometimes, the net was cast a lot closer to home, and the results were infinitely more chilling. First and foremost, the primary source, the bread and butter of the sacrificial system, came from war. This wasn't just about conquering territory or acquiring resources, although those were certainly bonuses. For the Aztecs, warfare itself was a sacred act, a spiritual hunt for Calpulli, sacrificial victims. These weren't wars of annihilation in the European sense. They were often highly ritualized flower wars, Xochiaoyotl, specifically designed to capture prisoners for sacrifice. Imagine a football match, but instead of scoring touchdowns, you're trying to subdue your opponent for the honor of having their heart ripped out on a pyramid. Yeah, a little different from your Sunday night game. You, as an Aztec warrior, were trained from a young age not just to kill, but to capture. The highest honor you could achieve wasn't slaying an enemy, but taking them alive, intact, to be presented to the gods. Think about the psychological conditioning involved. You're in the heat of battle, adrenaline pumping, and your ultimate goal is to disarm and subdue, not to land a killing blow. It required incredible skill, immense bravery, and a deeply ingrained understanding of your role in the cosmic drama. And the captive, well, if they were a noble warrior, they might even welcome the honor, believing their own brave sacrifice would fuel the sun and ensure the prosperity of their own people, or at least earn them a place among the gods. It was a strange, grim sort of respect that transcended the battlefield. But the net for victims wasn't just flung into the chaos of war. It was also cast wide through the elaborate tributary system that underpinned the Aztec Empire. Conquered cities and vassal states weren't just obligated to pay tribute in gold, cacao, or feathers. They often had to supply a quota of human beings. Imagine being a minor ruler in a subjugated city, knowing that every year you had to hand over a certain number of your own people to the colossal, hungry maw of Tenochtitlan. How did you choose? Were they criminals? Slaves? Random selections? The burden of that decision, the quiet dread permeating your city as the annual tribute collectors approached, would have been immense. These weren't necessarily warriors. They could be anyone. It was a cold, hard political reality, a way for the empire to assert its dominance and ensure its gods were satiated without the constant cost of warfare. And then there were the more insidious methods, the deeper cuts. Sometimes the victims were chosen from within Aztec society itself. Slaves, for instance, were a common source, but not just any slaves. If a slave was particularly beautiful, or skilled, or had a certain quality, they might be chosen for a higher purpose, to embody a god for a year, to live a life of luxury before their ultimate fate. Talk about a golden parachute with a very sharp landing. Criminals too could find themselves on the altar, their transgressions transformed into a final, albeit gruesome act of service to the state and the gods. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about repurposing life, transforming societal waste into divine sustenance. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the procurement process involved the innocent, the unblemished, children. For Tlaloc, the rain god, children were the preferred offering, particularly those whose tears flowed freely, as these were believed to encourage abundant rainfall. You, as a parent in Tenochtitlan, might have witnessed these processions. Imagine the sound of flutes and drums, mournful and low, accompanying a group of small children, adorned with feathers and finery, being led toward the sacred precinct. Their mothers, cloaked in silent grief, would follow. The belief was that their innocent tears, their unblemished lives, were the purest form of sacrifice, the most potent appeal to the rain god. It's a horror that transcends time, a raw wound of human desperation in the face of nature's unpredictability. You would see it, and you would understand the terrible logic, even as your own heart twisted in your chest, silently praying your child would never be chosen. And finally, there was self-sacrifice, auto-sacrifice. While not leading to death, this was a profoundly important part of the Aztec understanding of blood offerings. You, as a devout Aztec, would regularly draw blood from yourself, from your ears, your tongue, your genitals, using obsidian blades or agave thorns. This wasn't just a penance. It was a way of connecting directly with the gods, of offering a piece of your own precious life force to maintain the cosmic balance. It was a constant, personal reminder that your blood, your life, was ultimately at the disposal of the divine. This pervasive culture of self-mutilation and bloodletting normalized the idea that blood was currency, that suffering was spiritual, and that the body was merely a vessel for the divine energy that powered the universe. So the net was cast wide, indiscriminately, from the fiercest warrior captured in the heat of battle to the lowest slave, from the terrified tributary subject to the innocent child, and even to your own body. The procurement of victims was not a casual affair. It was an intricate, sacred, and often brutal system designed to ensure the continuous flow of Chalchihuatl to the hungry gods. Every person had their place in this cosmic drama, either as an active participant, a trembling observer, or ultimately as the offering itself. And the chilling truth is, the system worked, at least in the eyes of the Aztecs. The sun kept rising, the corn kept growing, and the empire kept expanding, all on a foundation built from human hearts and an endless supply of fear. And as you watch these processions, these grim selections, a knot of dread would tighten in your stomach, knowing that in this world, everyone was a potential offering. You've seen the warriors dragged in, the tributaries ushered in chains, the children led with somber purpose. But now, let's talk about a different breed of victim, one whose fate was both a divine honor and an exquisite torture. The Ixiptla, the living image of a god. This wasn't just about snatching a random soul. This was a meticulously choreographed, deeply psychological drama played out on the grandest stage of the empire, starring a human being who, for a year, literally became a god in the eyes of the people. And you, standing in the bustling plaza, were a witness to their brief, brilliant, and utterly doomed apotheosis. Imagine this. You're watching a procession, not of prisoners, not of terrified children, but of a figure radiating an almost otherworldly presence. This is the Ixiptla of Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, the most powerful and capricious of the gods. He's chosen not for his weakness, but for his absolute physical perfection. He's young, strong, unblemished, his skin like polished obsidian, his hair long and flowing. From the moment he's selected, his life transforms. He's no longer a mere mortal, he is Tezcatlipoca incarnate. For an entire year, this man lives a life of unimaginable luxury and adoration. He is clothed in the finest garments, adorned with jade and turquoise, his body perfumed with exotic oils. He's given 8 attendants, young men who follow him everywhere, ministering to his every whim, a retinue of his own. He wanders the streets of Tenochtitlan, playing the sacred flute, his every step a deliberate, almost divine stride. People prostrate themselves before him, offering prayers and sacrifices directly to him, the living God. He receives exquisite food, intoxicating, pulque, and is taught the manners and speech of the elite. You, in the crowd, would gaze upon him with a mixture of reverence, awe, and a chilling understanding of his ultimate fate. He is the God, walking among you, granting blessings, yet always, always, with that obsidian shadow of his destiny lurking just behind his eyes. He has 4 wives, each representing a different goddess: Xochiquetzal, Xilonen, Atlatonen, and Huixtocihuatl. They accompany him to banquets, to dances, to intimate moments. He experiences the pinnacle of human pleasure, power, and adoration. He lives more in that single year than most people would in a lifetime. Every moment is a heightened reality. Every touch, every taste, every sound amplified by the knowledge that it is all fleeting. A precious, fragile gift from the gods themselves. A final indulgence before the cosmic bill comes due. You'd watch him, sometimes from afar, sometimes as he passed close enough for you to smell the copal incense clinging to his robes, and you'd wonder, what does it feel like to be so utterly adored, so completely divine, knowing that every single one of these exquisite experiences is merely sweetening the meat for the ultimate sacrifice? The psychological journey of this Ixiptla must have been a crucible, to be lifted from mortal life, imbued with divine essence, treated with absolute reverence, only to know, with every passing day, that your true purpose is to be dismantled, your heart offered, your life force consumed. Did he embrace it? Did he rail against it in the privacy of his chambers? Or did the sheer weight of his divinity, the absolute belief of the people around him, truly transform him into a willing, even eager participant in his own demise? You, observing him, might catch a fleeting glimpse in his eyes, a profound sadness, a stoic acceptance, or perhaps even a terrifying zeal for his destiny. As the year draws to a close, the rituals intensify. He is given even more luxurious adornments, more lavish feasts. But the celebratory atmosphere takes on a darker, more mournful tone. The flutes he plays in the streets begin to sound more sorrowful. He is a god in mourning, not for himself, perhaps, but for the cycle of life and death he represents. And then the final days arrive. 4 days before the great festival of Toxcatl, his retinue is disbanded. His wives, his attendants, they leave him. He is taken to a special home, isolated, prepared. The world begins to subtly distance itself from the living God, preparing for his transformation back into mortal flesh, ready for his ultimate transcendence. On the night before his sacrifice, he is taken in a magnificent canoe, adorned with flowers, across the lake. He goes to a small temple, secluded and silent, where he prepares himself. You, watching from the shore, might imagine the scene. The quiet lapping of the water against the canoe, the silhouette of the temple against the stars, the chilling, profound solitude of a god confronting his own mortality. He might break his flutes one by one, tossing them into the water, each splash a farewell to his earthly divinity, a shedding of his temporary form. It's a poignant, almost poetic image, a stark contrast to the brutality that awaits. The next morning, his final journey begins. He ascends the steps of the temple alone, a solitary figure against the dawn sky. No longer the adored god, he is now the willing offering, the supreme gift to the cosmos. At the summit, waiting for him, are the priests. Dressed in their ritual regalia, their bodies painted black, their hair matted with dried blood, they are the grim reapers of the divine will. He might be offered one final draught of pulque, perhaps to ease the terror, perhaps to sharpen the spiritual connection. Then he is laid upon the sacrificial stone, and as the obsidian blade flashes, as the chest is opened, As the heart is presented to the heavens, you, the observer, understand the full, terrifying weight of what you've witnessed. It's not just a death. It's a cosmic event, the turning of a key in the universe's lock. The Ixipla has completed his divine mission, his brief, glorious, and utterly heartbreaking tenure as a living god. His death is not an ending, but a continuation, ensuring the sun's warmth, the rain's bounty, the very breath in your lungs. It's a profound testament to the Aztec belief system, a chilling display of ultimate faith, and a powerful, almost unbearable example of the lengths to which a society will go to appease its spiritual landlords. And as the crowd roars, a mix of reverence and relief, you can't help but wonder if, for that 1 year, the living god truly felt the weight of the heavens upon his shoulders, or if he was simply a man playing the most significant and most tragic role of his life.
All right, you've watched the processions. You've seen the Ixiptla live his year of divine luxury, and you've perhaps averted your gaze from the children's mournful march. Now, let's get down to the visceral reality, the main event, the terrifying spectacle that was the public sacrifice on top of the Templo Mayor. Imagine you're standing in the bustling ceremonial precinct of Tenochtitlan, jostling for space with thousands of others. The air is thick, humid, and carries a strange melange of smells. The sweet, cloying aroma of copal incense burning in clay censers, the pungent scent of human sweat, and, subtly at first, then undeniably, the metallic temps of fresh blood. This isn't just a ceremony. It's a sensory overload, a meticulously choreographed symphony of horror and devotion. You're gazing up at the magnificent Templo Mayor. Its twin sanctuaries, dedicated to Tlaloc, the god of rain and fertility, painted blue and white, representing water and clouds, and Huitzilopochtli, the god of war and sun, painted red and white, representing blood and sacrifice. The steps leading up to these sanctuaries are incredibly steep, almost vertical, designed to make the ascent a struggle, a symbolic climb towards the heavens. On the summit, tiny figures move, silhouetted against the vast sky. These are the high priests, identifiable by their elaborate feathered headdresses, their long, matted hair caked with dried blood and sacrificial offerings, their bodies often painted black or with terrifying skull motifs. They are the conduits, the holy butchers, the terrifying intermediaries between humanity and the insatiable gods. The atmosphere is electric. A low, rhythmic drumming emanates from the platform, a deep, resonant thump that vibrates through the ground and up into your chest, mirroring the anxious beat of your own heart. Flutes keen, their mournful wail cutting through the hum of the crowd. Chants rise and fall, ancient guttural incantations woven into the fabric of the cosmos. You can feel the tension, the collective anticipation, the profound reverence mixed with an undeniable, primal dread. This isn't entertainment. This is survival, a desperate public plea for the sun to rise again tomorrow, for the corn to grow, for the very continuation of your world then. The procession begins its ascent. The victims, often war captives, are led up the daunting steps. They are sometimes adorned with feathered regalia, their bodies painted, perhaps even slightly drugged to ease their terror or ensure their cooperation. You might see the flicker of defiance in some eyes, the stoic acceptance in others, and the sheer, unadulterated terror in still more. Each step is a step closer to oblivion, a slow-motion march towards the ultimate offering. For priests guide each victim, holding their limbs. As they reach the summit, near the sacrificial stone, known as the Tecatel, a convex slab of jasper or obsidian, the scene becomes clearer, sharper, crueler. The victim is laid upon the tecatel, stretched out, their back arched over, the stone exposing their chest. The 4 attendant priests hold down their arms and legs, pinning them firmly to the stone. You can almost feel the tremor of their muscles, the desperate struggle of their last moments. And then the 5th priest, the Tlamatquisqui, steps forward. In his hand he holds the tecpatl, a razor-sharp blade of obsidian or flint, often intricately carved, its edges honed to a terrifying precision. This isn't just a knife, it's a sacred instrument, blessed, imbued with divine purpose. There's a collective gasp, a held breath in the vast crowd below. And then, with a swift, practiced motion, the Tlamatquisqui plunges the tecpatl into the victim's chest. He aims for the space between the ribs, slicing through skin, muscle, and cartilage. You might hear a muffled cry, a choked gasp, a desperate last breath. The blade works quickly, efficiently. He reaches in, his hand disappearing into the gaping wound, searching, grasping. And then, with a powerful yank, he extracts it, the still beating heart dripping with scarlet. Pulsating with the last vestiges of life, the priest holds it aloft, high above his head, presenting the precious offering to the sun, to Huitzilopochtli. The roar from the crowd is deafening now, a guttural cry of both awe and relief. The sacrifice is complete. The gods have been fed. The sun has been nourished. The world is safe, for now. You watch as a thin wisp of steam rises from the warm heart in the cool morning air, a visceral, undeniable sign of life's essence being offered up. But the ritual isn't over. The body, now lifeless, is unceremoniously pushed down the steep steps of the Templo Mayor. It tumbles, bounces, rolls, coming to rest at the base, a grotesque, broken doll. This isn't disrespect, it's part of the process. The fall symbolically returns the body to the earthly realm, where other priests or warriors await. And this is where the really gritty details come in. Depending on the specific ritual or deity, the body might be further dismembered. Limbs could be removed, the head severed. The skull, stripped clean, would eventually find its place on the Tezcatlipoca, the chilling skull rack that stood prominently in the ceremonial precinct, a stark testament to the sheer scale of devotion. And death. Imagine hundreds, perhaps thousands, of human skulls, carefully arranged, staring blankly out at the city. This wasn't a warning. It was a cosmic ledger, a running tally of the lives offered to keep the universe churning. Some parts of the body, particularly the limbs, might be taken by the warriors who captured the victim, to be ritually consumed in a cannibalistic feast. A symbolic act of communion with the divine and a way of absorbing the strength of the fallen. Foe.u, watching all this unfold, would feel a potent mix of emotions. Awe at the sheer power of the gods, relief that the world had been spared another day, and perhaps a deep, unsettling fear. You'd feel the collective spiritual adrenaline of thousands of people, all unified in this profound, terrifying act. The smell of fresh blood would linger in the air, a constant reminder of the price of your existence. The sounds of the chants, the drums, the flutes, would echo in your mind long after the ritual was over. This was the core of your faith, the grim engine of your empire, and a chilling testament to the lengths humanity will go when faced with an existential threat, perceived or real. And as the priests began to prepare for the next offering, you'd know that the cycle of life and death, of divine hunger and human sacrifice, was an eternal, inescapable truth in your world. All right, If you thought the standard heart extraction on the Templo Mayor was the peak of Aztec ritual intensity, you, my friend, are about to have your perception stretched thin and then flayed. Because while the heart offering was indeed the most common and iconic form of sacrifice, the Aztec pantheon was a diverse crowd, and some gods had very specific, shall we say, niche appetites. We're talking about rituals that push the boundaries of psychological endurance and physical horror, acts so profoundly disturbing yet so deeply meaningful to the Aztecs. They demand a deeper, more unflinching look. Let's start with Tlaloc, the ancient, enigmatic rain god. You remember him, right? The one who loved the tears of children. Well, his sacrifices were a category unto themselves, performed not on the dizzying heights of the Templo Mayor, but often at sacred mountain sites or caves, places associated with rain, mist, and water. Imagine you're part of a small, somber procession making its way up a mist-shrouded mountain path. The air is cold, damp. The sounds of mournful flutes and conch shells echo in the fog. Ahead, a group of young children, sometimes as young as 6, are being led. They are adorned, yes, but not in the finery of a living god. They wear paper ornaments, feathers, painted masks. They are small, delicate offerings to a god who can bring both life-giving rain and devastating drought. The ritual for Tlaloc was often about water, so, sometimes, these children were drowned. Yes, you heard that right. Submerged in sacred pools, or in the deep, dark cenotes, natural sinkholes that dotted the landscape. The belief was that their innocent tears, shed during the ordeal, would mingle with the water, calling forth the life-giving rains. You might stand on the edge of a sacred pool, listening to the desperate gurgle, the final struggle, knowing that this terrible act was meant to save your crops, to feed your family, to prevent a famine that would doom everyone. The raw, primal grief of the parents would be a palpable force, a silent scream of agony and acceptance that hung heavy in the damp air. It's a level of desperation that is almost incomprehensible to the modern mind, where the survival of the many demanded the ultimate price from the innocent few. The thought of it, the chilling silence broken only by the mournful flutes and the lapping water, would haunt your dreams for weeks. Then there was the festival of Tlaquixopializli, the flaying of men, dedicated to Xipe-Totec, our lord, the flayed one, the god of fertility, spring, and regeneration. This guy wore human skin, literally representing the shedding of the old, the emergence of the new, and his rituals. They were a masterclass in symbolic horror. Imagine you're in a vast arena, the crowd buzzing with anticipation, not just for a sacrifice, but for a gladiatorial combat unlike any you've ever seen. A war captive, a brave warrior, is brought out. He's given a wooden club, adorned with feathers, but it's a ceremonial weapon designed to symbolize the cutting power of obsidian without actually having it. His opponent, an Aztec warrior, often a jaguar or eagle knight, armed with a real Macuahuitl, a wooden club embedded with razor-sharp obsidian blades. This isn't a fair fight. It's a ritualized, desperate struggle. The captive is tied by one leg to a massive stone, limiting his movement. He faces multiple fully armed Aztec warriors. You watch as he fights with incredible valor, knowing his fate is sealed. He is meant to die fighting, to provide a glorious struggle that honors the gods. The sounds of the obsidian blades striking, the grunts of effort, the roar of the crowd. It's a brutal ballet of death. When he eventually falls, exhausted and wounded, his heart is cut out. But the horror doesn't end there. His body is then flayed, Yes, flayed. The skin, painstakingly removed, is then worn by a priest, or sometimes by the warrior who captured him for the next 20 days. Imagine seeing a priest walking among you, his body covered in the loose, blood-stained skin of a freshly sacrificed man, its texture, its smell, its utterly grotesque reality, a constant reminder of the cycle of death and rebirth. The skin would slowly putrefy, peel, and decay, symbolizing the shedding of the old earth and the emergence of new vegetation. You'd smell the stench, see the decaying flesh, and understand, in a deeply unsettling way, the powerful symbolism of transformation and renewal that Totec embodied. It's a terrifyingly visceral metaphor for the return of spring. But let's not forget auto-sacrifice, the bloodletting that you, yourself, as a devout Aztec, would regularly perform. This wasn't a public spectacle leading to death, but a pervasive, intimate act of devotion. You'd use a sharpened obsidian blade or a stingray spine, piercing your ears, your tongue, the soft flesh of your genitals. The blood, a few precious drops, would be offered to the gods, smeared on idols, or dripped onto paper which was then burned. You'd feel the sharp pain, the sting of the wound, the warm trickle of your own blood, and you would understand that you were participating in the cosmic bargain, contributing your own life force to keep the universe turning. This act normalized the idea that pain and blood were sacred, that your body was a vessel for divine energy to be shared. It was a constant, personal reminder that sacrifice wasn't just something done to others. It was woven into the very fabric of your individual spiritual life. And then there were the more obscure, but equally chilling, forms of sacrifice. The burning of victims to the fire god Xuchitl, where they might be drugged and then thrown into a massive pyre. The ritual archery sacrifice to the fertility goddess Tlazolteotl, where victims were shot with arrows until their blood literally sprayed onto the earth, fertilizing it, or the occasional sacrifice by drowning for other water deities. Each god, each occasion had its specific demands, its particular horrors, its unique blend of devotion and despair. You, living in this world, would witness these acts not with detached horror, but with a profound understanding of their necessity. They were grisly, yes, undeniably so, but they were also profound acts of faith, desperate measures to maintain a precarious cosmic balance. These specialized sacrifices were not mere variations on a theme. They were deeply symbolic expressions of a complex cosmology, each drop of blood, each agonizing moment, a vital contribution to the life and continuation of the world as you knew it. And as you walked through the streets of Tenochtitlan, the smell of incense, blood, and decaying flesh would be a constant, potent reminder of the strange and terrifying secrets that powered your magnificent, brutal civilization. All right, so the heart has been offered, the body pushed down the steps. The crowd's roar subsides, giving way to a low, murmuring hum of collective relief. But you, my friend, know that in the Aztec world, death is not an end. It's merely a transition, a transformation, and the physical remains of a sacrifice were far from mere refuse. What happened after the heart was ripped out was often just as ritualistic, just as profoundly symbolic, and in many ways, just as disturbing as the act of sacrifice itself. We're delving into the grim, intricate after-party of death, a banquet of cosmic communion, and yes, sometimes, a literal feast of human flesh. Imagine the base of the Templo Mayor, where the bodies of the sacrificed victims have now collected. They lie in grotesque heaps, stark reminders of the morning's rituals. But these aren't just bodies. They are vessels that once contained Chalcahuitl, the precious water, the divine essence. And these vessels, even in death, had further roles to play in the grand, terrifying schema of Aztec cosmology. The most iconic fate for the heads of the sacrificed was the Tzumpanli, the chilling skull rack. Imagine a massive wooden scaffold, a monumental display structure located prominently in the ceremonial precinct, often near the main temple. It consisted of tall wooden poles, horizontally traversed by other poles, upon which hundreds, sometimes thousands, of human skulls were impaled. The skulls were meticulously prepared, stripped of flesh, polished, and then drilled through the temples to be threaded onto the horizontal poles. You, walking through the city, would pass this towering testament to death. It wasn't meant to be a deterrent, not primarily. It was a cosmic ledger, a public tally of the Empire's offerings to the gods, a visible manifestation of their collective devotion and their unwavering commitment to keeping the sun alive. The sight would be both awe-inspiring and deeply unsettling. The blank eye sockets of countless deceased staring out, a silent, macabre chorus echoing the cries of the living. Each skull represented a life given, a universe sustained. It was a constant, tangible reminder of the power of the gods and the price of your continued existence. But what about the rest of the body? This is where things get even more specific, and, to your modern sensibilities, truly horrifying. For many sacrificial victims, particularly captured warriors, parts of their flesh were ritually consumed. Yes, you heard that correctly. Cannibalism. But not out of hunger, not out of barbarism for its own sake. This was deeply symbolic, a profound act of spiritual communion. Imagine a group of warriors, those who captured the victim, gathered in a special chamber or private home after the sacrifice. The body of the fallen warrior, now dismembered, is brought to them. The limbs, often the thighs and arms, were the preferred cuts. These would be ritually cooked, perhaps stewed with maize and flowers, transforming them into a sacred meal. You would partake, perhaps reluctantly, perhaps with a sense of solemn duty, in this feast. The belief was that by consuming the flesh of a brave warrior, you would absorb their tonality, their vital essence, their strength, their courage. It was a way of honoring the deceased, of integrating their power into your own, and of participating directly in the divine cycle of consumption and renewal. This wasn't just eating. It was a religious experience, a direct connection to the divine energy that permeated all life. It was a shared meal with the gods, a gruesome sacrament. The taste would be unsettling, the texture unfamiliar, but the spiritual weight of the act would be undeniable. You'd chew slowly, feeling the strength of the fallen warrior becoming your own, a strange, powerful sensation that transcended mere sustenance. And then there was the skin. Remember Zyptotec, our lord, the flayed one. After a victim was flayed in his honor, the skin was carefully removed and, as we discussed, worn by a priest or a warrior for 20 days. Imagine the sight, a figure walking through the market, or performing rituals draped in the loose, decaying skin of a human being. The smell of putrefaction would become increasingly pungent over those 20 days. A constant, visceral reminder of the cycle of decay and rebirth. The skin would become brittle, then supple, then finally start to slough off, mirroring the earth shedding its old skin to allow new vegetation to grow. It's a powerful, almost unbearable metaphor for the agricultural cycles that sustained the Empire, a constant, sickeningly realistic reenactment of nature's harsh truths. You'd avoid their gaze, perhaps, but you couldn't escape the sight, or the smell, or the profound spiritual message it conveyed. Other parts of the body had specific destinies. The heart, after being offered to the sun, might be placed in a sacred bowl, sometimes burned, its smoke rising as a final offering. The internal organs, perhaps less valuable in a spiritual sense, might be discarded or offered to specific animals in the zoo, further integrating them into the natural cycle. Bones, particularly long bones, could be carved into ritual tools or musical instruments, transforming the remains into objects of ongoing sacred use. Nothing, it seems, was truly wasted in the elaborate, macabre economy of Aztec sacrifice. Every piece, every part, played a role in the continuous, terrifying dance of life and death. You, living in this world, would understand that the rituals extended far beyond the moment of death. The afterlife of the sacrificed was as meticulously planned and executed as their demise. These post-sacrifice rituals were not merely about disposal. They were about transformation, integration, and the continued nourishment of the cosmos. The Tsampandli stood as a grim beacon. The cannibalistic feasts forged bonds and transferred power, and the flayed skins embodied renewal. Each element contributed to a terrifyingly holistic worldview where the boundaries between life and death, human and divine, were constantly blurred and redefined through the shedding of blood and the repurposing of flesh. And as you finished your ritual meal, the taste lingering, the image of the Tzampatli etched in your mind, you'd feel a profound sense of connection to the universe, a chilling understanding of the demanding, beautiful, and utterly brutal dance you were all a part of. You've seen it all now, haven't you? You've stood in the blood-soaked plaza, witnessed the living gods, heard the children's mournful flutes, smelled the copal and the gore, and even partaken in the grim communion of the gods. You've journeyed deep into the strange, terrifying secrets of Aztec sacrifice rituals, and I imagine your modern sensibilities are reeling. How do we reconcile such beauty, such intricate social structures, such advanced astronomy, with this profound, almost industrial-scale system of human sacrifice? The echoes of those obsidian blades and collective roars still resonate through the centuries, demanding that we, too, confront the unsettling paradox of this magnificent, brutal civilization. The sheer scale of it is what often grips you first. The numbers are debated, but the reality is that thousands, potentially tens of thousands, of lives were offered to the Aztec gods each year. Imagine the societal impact of such a system, the constant fear of being chosen, the desperate need for war captives, the psychological toll on parents, warriors, and priests alike. Yet, for the Aztecs, this wasn't an aberration. It was the very bedrock of their existence. It ensured the sun's warmth, the rain's bounty, the fertility of the earth, and the continued life of their empire. It was a constant, tangible reaffirmation of their covenant with the divine, a necessary burden for cosmic survival. You, as an Aztec, would have understood this as an absolute truth, woven into the very fabric of your being from birth. To question it was to invite cosmic annihilation. To participate, even just as an observer, was to be a vital part of the grand, terrifying drama of existence. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived, led by Hernan Cortes, they were undoubtedly horrified by what they witnessed. Their own religious zealotry, steeped in the Inquisition and the Crusades, certainly provided ample justification for their subsequent actions. They saw the Tzampatli, the blood-soaked altars, the flayed skins, and they interpreted it through their own lens. Pure barbarism, the work of the devil. And in that judgment, they found the moral license to dismantle an entire civilization. For them, it was not just conquest. It was a holy war to end these abominations. But you now understand that for the Aztecs, these were not abominations. They were acts of profound devotion, a sacred responsibility. This clash of worldviews, this fundamental misunderstanding of cosmic necessity versus diabolical evil, led to one of history's most devastating cultural collisions. So, how do you, a modern observer, judge this? Do you condemn it unequivocally as savagery, as a stain on human history? Or do you try to understand it through the lens of their unique, terrifying cosmology? There's no easy answer, is there? You can't condone the violence, the suffering, the systematic taking of life. Your modern moral compass revolts at the thought of it. But you can, perhaps, attempt to grasp the profound fear, the deep spiritual conviction, the existential dread that compelled an entire society to undertake such acts. It speaks to the terrifying power of belief, the lengths to which humanity will go when confronted with the perceived demands of the divine, or the perceived threat of annihilation. The legacy of Aztec sacrifice is etched not only in the archaeological remains, the excavated Templo Maya, the Tenzonplo of Tenochtitlan, that still yield their grim secrets, but also in our collective consciousness. It stands as a stark reminder of the diversity of human spiritual expression, of the often uncomfortable truths about our past, and of the profound differences that can exist between cultures. It challenges us to look beyond our own assumptions, to grapple with practices that defy easy categorization, and to understand that what appears monstrous to one society might be sacred and absolutely necessary to another. The Aztecs built an empire on blood, fueled by fear, driven by a cosmic imperative. Their sacrifices were not senseless acts. They were deeply meaningful, intricately planned rituals essential for the continuation of their world. They believed they were literally keeping the sun in the sky, breathing life into the corn, ensuring the very existence of humanity. And in their own eyes, they succeeded, day after terrifying day, until a different kind of horror, a different kind of conquest, brought their world to an end. As you close your eyes, perhaps you can still see the smoke of copal rising, hear the mournful flutes, feel the ground tremble with the beat of the drums. The secrets of Aztec sacrifice are strange, yes, but they are also profoundly human. They speak of our fear of the unknown, our desperate need for meaning, and the incredible, sometimes terrifying, power of our beliefs. And in these echoes from the stone, we find not just a story of ancient rituals, but a timeless reflection on the complex, often brutal, and always astonishing tapestry of the human spirit.